Kathleen is working in my lab. She did her undergraduate research for about a year on working on this snail she's going to tell you about. She's a first-year graduate student. She just started this semester in my lab. I'm really fortunate that she's elected to continue on this work. And so she's going to talk about predatory behavior and potential ecological impacts of the assassin snail. And really forward to seeing it.
So what are assassin snails? It's a freshwater snail species with a pointy spiral shell with alternating dark brown and yellow stripes that resemble a bumblebee. It is part of the only freshwater family in the large lineage of marine snails that include predatory snails such as whelks and cone snails. It is native throughout Southeast Asia, especially in Malaysia, Thailand, and parts of Indonesia, as you can see on this map. Now, it is quite a popular aquarium pet. Many aquarium enthusiasts highly value this pet for the remarkable ability to hunt and consume other snails, making them a natural solution for controlling snail populations. And this includes things such as trumpet snails and ramshorns without the use of chemicals. They're very hardy and adaptable snails and has a wide range of water temperatures, and they can readily reproduce in captivity. It is quite common for a lot of aquarium enthusiasts to actually breed their own snails and try to sell them online. And as you can see in this picture, we got a lot of different entries just to show like the availability and how easy it is to buy them. And as for what's known in scientific literature, so there's very few scientific papers on assassin snails, but the ones that are available are centered around their potential as an invasive species. And there's one study in Australia that is especially interesting, where they tried to examine the thermal and salinity tolerance of this species to kind of predict their potential geographic range. And the results showed that they can survive in quite a large range of conditions. And they're especially worried because if this pet is ever released in the Australian freshwater system, they're worried that without any natural predators or any natural competitors and also any parasites, that this assassin snails could be a significant threat if introduced in these different ecosystems. And there's one particular study that's also done in India where they wanted to see the potential of the species as an invasive species. And they found it's a feeding trial where they tried to feed these assassin snails all these different kinds of native species. And they found even despite the different sizes and such, they were able to consume all of them, and that's what this diagram is. It's showing the different predation rates, and despite the larger sizes, they are still able to consume them. And this is extremely concerning since they're worried about the species ever being released into the wild, which highlights the need for further investigation of the species. So why is this important? Well, while assassin snails are popular as an aquarium, pet, and they're very poorly studied in scientific literature. Most available information regarding the species can be found on care websites rather than scientific studies, and also a lot of different hobbyist forums and blogs. Now, the widespread availability of this pet in the aquarium trade has raised a lot of concerns about their potential potential as a invasive species if introduced into non-native freshwater ecosystems. And there's a risk that careless pet owners may just release them into the wild, yet their invasion threat is completely and poorly understood because of such little information that's available. And it's interesting because there are some anecdotal reports from hobbyists that suggest that they're very voracious generalist predators. However, key factors such as what kind of prey they can eat and what type and reproduction rates and many other things are just simply understudied. And this is especially concerning because as species, there are some studies, or rather, there are some who claim in these forums that they can prey on shrimp, snail eggs, fish eggs, and even newborn fry. But again, this is largely anecdotal, and it's coming from aquarium enthusiasts rather than actual studies. This knowledge gap is especially concerning because as predators, assassin snails could disrupt local food chains by preying on native snail species who play ecological key roles. Now, the purpose of this study was to scientifically evaluate their predatory behavior and potential prey items. It has been suggested that assassin snails are generalist predators, but there's no direct evidence for this. Now, just some methods to better understand their predatory behavior. We aim to capture time-lapse photos of these assassin snails actively consuming prey. By doing this, we're documenting their feeding habits, and we hope to gather a cleaner evidence of how they hunt. And this is just a photo of the base and how the camera is placed into a housing unit, and it's hovering over the aquarium with the water filled, and then we place the assassin snails and the prey inside and just record, and it does so that it captures a photo every minute. All right, so this is a video of feeding behavior of native snails in Alabama streams. Now, this particular trial lasted for about 3 hours, and you can see how they aggregate and kind of come together to eat this one snail. Now, to show the next video of interest, now for this one, this trial lasted for 7 hours, and there were several notable predatory behaviors that was kind of different from the snail trial, and it shows how they can eat Asiatic clams. These are also found in Alabama streams, but they are considered invasive because they are not native here. And you can see at the very end of the video, the clam is completely empty. Now, based on the feeding trial for the snail, we did confirm that yes, they can eat native Alabama snail. The particular species was Alenia, and they also seem to pack hunt, which is a new scientific finding. And as for the clams, it was interesting because even though you can see how there's other prey available, the snails do seem to target a single clam together. And their feeding time was also much longer. The second one was about 7 hours. And their tendency to aggregate kind of suggests more complex hunting behavior as they work together to pry open this clam shell, which kind of has implications of their ecological impact if introduced into freshwater ecosystems. Now, just some future research goals. Now, since there's such limited research on this particular species, I plan to investigate habitat range to kind of understand the environmental factors that enable them to really thrive and understand what kind of limitations that hold them back in certain ecosystems and what conditions make it difficult for them to live. And it would really help to kind of assess the risk of its spread, and also will provide valuable insights regarding its status as a potential invasive species, and perhaps help form strategies to mitigate its risk if it ever becomes an issue, especially in the United States, because so far the only finding was that it was found in Singapore, where it's non-native, but so far there hasn't been no reports in America. And another key area of research that would be also important to consider its dietary preference, as well as reproductive biology, to kind of get an idea of like how quickly it can establish in like populations in certain new ecosystems and how much they're able to consume prey and grow. And that's it.
Any questions for our speaker?
Kathleen, what was the most difficult part of getting this study to work? So it was really neat in the videos, but was that difficult to actually make happen?
I suppose the most difficult part of this experiment was actually recording the snails eat the clams, because this was completely a new finding and was found in previous experiments, and we completely did not expect it. And we wanted to really try to capture it on video. Unfortunately, with assassin snails, they do tend to be more active at night. So that particular one, I spent about like 7 hours recording it. So it was rather difficult, but it was pretty exciting when I was finally able to capture the hunting of the clams.
What made you pick this specific kind of snail, and why did you have a certain drawings of them?
I always had like an interest in invasive species in general, so I really love studying about different ecosystems. And this pet in particular is very surprising because I didn't really know there are actually predatory snails, for one thing, and I found it quite interesting that even though it's a pretty popular aquarium pet, there's absolutely like no research on it, and it could be concerning, especially like I mentioned the Australian article I came across. It would definitely be very bad if it was like released in Australia, as that study like indicated, and that could also be an issue if ever introduced in freshwater ecosystems in America as well.
One more round. Sorry, go ahead.
Do you
My
have
bad, I see your
any-
hand.
Do you have plans to publish about the pack hunting behavior?
Yes, I am currently working on the manuscript with my professor regarding not only the fact that the pack hunting, but also the fact that they can eat clams, because that seems very surprising, especially because, as you can see in the video, it really seemed like they're like pack hunting and working together to just pry it open. And yes, trying to get it published as like a nature note.
Thank you.
One more round of applause then for our speaker.